The world a different place. There are many different kinds of entrepreneurs. There are the shopkeepers and the snack vendors. There are the tech entrepreneurs. There's the socially minded citizens you see today. They're the BRAC. Around the world, entrepreneurship and small and mid-sized enterprise development is a proven model to simultaneously alleviate poverty and bring about huge economic growth. So before I begin with the lightning round, I want to take a moment to reflect on entrepreneurship in Bangladesh. A think tank in Washington, D.C. called the Global Development and Entrepreneurship Index has chosen 14 pillars to understand and quantify entrepreneurship around the world. Some of these pillars include things like access to capital, cultural support, and networking. Bangladesh scores relatively low or middle in most of these pillars, with one very notable exception. They score much higher than the world in something called opportunity startups. So in the world, there are two reasons to start a company. One is because there's simply no work. There's nothing else to do. You have no choice, so you become an entrepreneur. The other is what we call an opportunity entrepreneur, meaning there are other choices. So you, for many different reasons, socially minded like we'll see today, or because you see economic opportunity, you start. Bangladesh scores very high on the number of entrepreneurs who started their practice for opportunity reasons, not for necessity reasons. This is my third time in this country. At least from what I've seen, there is a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurship in this country. It's a very strong work ethic, and a lot of people doing things are doing for opportunity and not out of necessity, finding an interesting economic niche within the world. So that's the intro. I'll tell you the fun that we're going to have today. We have four wonderful entrepreneurs representing different organizations and a social impact fund as a fifth. So the way we're going to do this is each of the entrepreneurs have 3 to 5 minutes to give a presentation. And we have wonderful judges. You want to raise your hand if you're a judge? So the entrepreneur will come up here, and the judges will be able to ask questions of the entrepreneur. And then at the end, the audience will be able to ask them any questions. And then we're going to have a brief 15-minute discussion of the social venture fund on access to capital, which is always necessary for entrepreneurs. Then the judges will convene and be awarding a very spectacular prize that's not known among the entrepreneurs. So does that make sense? Anybody have any questions before we begin? It's going to be a lot of fun. Without further ado, Grace can introduce the first entrepreneur.
Okay, so Ethan has done like all the easy tasks in this session and given me the most difficult job to pick to decide the orders of the speakers. So I hope I'll survive. So I would like to invite Tazeen from Spriha Foundation and share his thoughts with us.
Thank you, Grace. Can I have my...
And to make this a little more fun, so we had told all the entrepreneurs they were limited to 3 slides only, but Tazeen didn't get that email, and he has like 65 slides. He assured me that he can get this done in 3 minutes. So with his permission, I'm actually timing him.
All right. Cool. Is there a clicker? At least, can I get a clicker though? No? Okay, so I'll just stand here so that I can
Sure.
go. So we're Spriha Foundation. We are a pretty young nonprofit. We've been working for about 8 years now, but in our current form about like 3 years. So just to start with the story of this girl who's 9 months old. Her name is Meena, and this is her mom. You can see how she's sweating. It's super hot over there. Her sisters, this is their home. Look at the pillows stacked up, because in that 8x8 room, the only thing that fits is a bed for all the 5 people living in there. This is their kitchen, open flames, regular fires, and a toilet that's shared by 300 people. 200 to 300 people use that toilet, and look at the awesome system. It goes directly to, like we talked about it yesterday. And this is the community. The whole community is built on top of the sewage dump for the city. And this is just only one of the slums where we work. And that's where Spriha comes in. We work to break the cycle of poverty for underprivileged people by providing healthcare, education, and skills training. So those are the 3 areas we work. And we envision a life without poverty. But why these 3 areas? So we initially started working on healthcare. We see ourselves as a company that's always evolving. So we start off with healthcare, providing regular We have a clinic, we have a pathology lab, we have pharmacy, we have a full setup for a clinic. And we also have door-to-door service where people go and provide health services door-to-door. And after 5 years and focusing a lot on maternal care, we realized that, hey, the baby is born healthy and safely, and then everyone's healthy, but what's next? That's not really helping them break the cycle. So then we studied the people, and then my background is in human behavioral research. That's what I used to do for Microsoft for 10 years in the headquarters in Seattle. And I put that into here, the human-centered design approach, and looked at what can we do. And that's where we came up with this model of we establish preschools inside the slums for 3 to 5 year olds. As soon as they're 5 year old, we put them to regular school, and they start going to our after-school program that goes all the way through high school, and then scholarship to go to college. So now they're already part of the mainstream, and the last bit is empowerment. We have leadership program, we have skills training program, we have life skills program, and with all of that, they're able to break the cycle of poverty finally. Just a quick numbers in terms of what we have done. Just in 2015, we serve about 5,000, so that's 20,000 people per month. And then we have had about 10,000 patients in our clinic alone. We have served almost 1,000 children immunized, and then almost 800 moms that went through our program. And look at the smile. Right? They just can't get this service in other places. So they have all this service available to us. In our education program, we have about 800 kids in our both after school and preschool. And they do pretty well academically, and they have other options available for us. We have a library. We take them to study tours, things they don't have access to. And then finally, our skills training program, we have had about close to 400 people in the empowerment program going through different skills. And I want to touch a little bit before I end about what's behind our success. Because we see ourselves a little different than other organizations working in these areas. First of all, as I say, all of our programs are based on the human-centered design approach. We study the people, we look at their behaviors and their lifestyle, and all our programs are designed based off of that. The next thing is, many of us who started are from the for-profit world, and we're related to many tech startups. So we bring in the whole concept of lean methodology. We're very lean, we're very agile, we're very flexible. All our programs are really small different communities, and we're gonna go for treating 12,000 patients in the clinic. We're gonna build 2 new schools, and that's pretty much our
BRAC Social Innovation Lab as a startup within BRAC. So whenever people think about BRAC, whenever people look at BRAC, they look at BRAC from a very interesting perspective. Oh, this is the world's largest NGO, and it is serving 126 million people across the world. Probably it's very big, very bureaucratic. But Social Innovation Lab, let's consider this is a startup within BRAC. So we work in a very interesting way, which sometimes clashes with the traditional practices and other things that many of BRAC programs do. But we would like to think that we are here to bring a change. So if you look at the question that we are trying to think about how can BRAC how can we utilize the right opportunities, how can we continuously learn, and how can we scale up successes? What does it mean really? So when BRAC started in 1972, it was just a small relief organization. Now you look at BRAC, how big it has grown. So when the size and the complexity of the organization increases, and it increases rapidly, then actually it's very hard to stay innovative. But at BRAC, we say that innovation and scale, this is BRAC's DNA. This is what BRAC is. But at the same time, we say balancing innovation and scale, you see, it's very hard. It's extremely difficult. So there comes the Social Innovation Lab. So at BRAC Social Innovation Lab, we are trying to see how we can balance innovation and scale at the same time. So we do different type of things. We can categorize that into 4 categories. We are trying to build the capacity of BRAC staff so that they can innovate and scale at the same time. We are trying to see how we can facilitate organizational change, and that also aligns with the strategic priorities we have at BRAC. We are trying to study scale. So we are not looking at BRAC from our own perspective. We are looking at South Asia. We are looking at the global South, and we are trying to see how we can learn from others. And this is why we are organizing this Frugal Innovation Forum, why we have amazing 60 speakers, why you all are here, because we want to learn from you. We want to share our learnings. We want to make this a very meaningful exchange. And finally, innovation at BRAC, we think it's not about a product, and it's not always about the process. It's also about the culture. It's all about the people. So all the people who you are looking at, who are sitting beside you, who are walking around you, they're the ambassadors of BRAC. And they are the Social Innovation Lab team members, most of them, and they are doing amazing work. So some of our colleagues, they are running the Innovation Fund for Mobile Money, where we are scaling up different mobile money initiatives across the country. Some are in front of the auditorium. There are some things outside this room as well. So if we want to talk about the next step, I would say let's just talk. These are all different things. These are some of the knowledge pieces that we have produced so far. We are
Under 4 minutes.
Oh, 2 and 4.
Good job.
Yeah.
I'd Karishma to talk about Voto Mobile and share her thoughts.
I'm going to take the full 5 minutes. I'm going to claim them now. And I have 5 slides that we'll chat about the ways that we can use, technology in the development sector to really increase the impact of our programs going forward. So, how many of you have been on projects before where you've needed to get really time-sensitive information to remote pockets of various countries before? Or how many of you have, had M&E in your programs where you wanted to measure more than just the key metrics at baseline or at endline, but you wanted to measure them, let's say, monthly or even twice a month, but felt like you didn't have the actual monetary resources to do so? Or let's say you wanted to scale up a program, but scaling up that program would require training, thousands of community volunteers in, all parts of the country, and you had to do it quickly and cost effectively, and you kind of struggled with those things. So those are the types of problems that Voto noticed that the development sector was kind of grappling with. And at that same time, 3 years ago, when we started noticing these things, we saw that mobile phone penetration rates were also skyrocketing globally. So much so that households that didn't even have toilets or didn't have electricity or regular access to food did have access to mobile phones. They might not have, every single person might not have had one, but they at least had access. And so, we realized 3 billion people in this world are disconnected from information. What can we do with mobile phones to actually reach them? And so the premise of Voto is that we want to make sure that we're using technology that people already have. So we don't want to go and pass out tablets or smartphones to people, but rather we want our technology to be able to reach their most basic mobile phone. So, the 1996 Nokia that you used to use, our technology works on that. And so what we do is we use SMS and pre-recorded voice calls for behavior change projects and data collection in the social sector, ranging from health to agriculture. So to help you conceptualize this, I wanted to give a couple of different examples. So we're running a project right now in Afghanistan with UNICEF Afghanistan focused on polio eradication. As many of you probably know, Afghanistan is out to very remote parts of Afghanistan to vaccinate children every month. And then they receive a survey immediately from our platform in their language of choice. And so it's all over a pre-recorded voice call. So you can imagine they would be asked questions over the phone like, how many children did you vaccinate? Please key in that information. And the field vaccinators would be able to key in, 100 for 100. They would then be asked, did you face any challenges during the vaccination campaign this month? Please press 1 if you faced challenges. Please press 2 if you did not face challenges. And then they would be able to get information from these remote pockets right away so that they can make changes before the next campaign. Another project that I'll talk about really quickly is this project that we're doing with market to, throughout the whole process, planting, sowing, etc. And so farmers enroll in the program, and then they receive timely information, again, via voice calls, so we're able to transcend any sort of literacy barriers, and they're able to use weather patterns. We're able to get that information, put it into our program project that goes out, And not just tell them, the weather is changing, but tell them what they need to do as a result to increase their crop yield. So we can ask questions like, when are you supposed to plant your seeds? If you were supposed to plant them last week, press 1. If you were supposed to plant them this week, press 2, etc. We can
Invite Shamseen to talk about identity inclusion.
Project, but yeah. So when we talk about disaster, in this forum, I'm sure we've come across numbers such as 500,000 people have died in Bangladesh because of disasters since 1970s. Now, the facts that we don't really hear about are more than just numbers about how many people have died and how many people are survivors or victims. What we actually continue to hear are victims, survivors. What we don't hear is how rehabilitation does not limit someone's identity into becoming just, making their disasters or the problems that they faced, they're part of their identity. So, who committed suicide after rescuing people. And then there were people whose livelihoods were destroyed because of psychosocial disability, because of mental health problems, classes. So these are facts that we don't discuss, because those are, when we talk about disaster management, we don't consider mental health, and we talked about dignity of people. And so the barrier, the gap here, the problem here that we see is that people, when they talk about rehabilitation, they don't talk about inclusion.
Entrepreneur, what kind of problem did you face? If you give some specific that this kind of problems, 1, 2, 3, or many. Thank you.
Thank you. The big one would be risk-taking, as Ethan mentioned earlier. There's a huge risk. If I can speak for myself, for example, I left my job at Microsoft, which paid a lot of money, and then which is, my salary used to be bigger than entire of Spriya's budget. But then I left that, and now I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to go into a sustainable model, and maybe I can get paid. So there are lots of risks that you have to take. And then especially in our setup in Bangladesh, I don't know about other South Asian countries, there is this huge pressure from your family to finish your studies and do your work. My dad still denies that I've come back from US after all these years. My mom still making the financial math and then can't figure out like why I did this. So that I think is a big challenge.
So I think like for entrepreneurs, if you have something that is very different from the convention, which it usually is if you're an entrepreneur, that pitching that idea is the hardest. When I started talking about psychosocial disability, everyone said it's depression, schizophrenia, or something like bipolar, that's it. But when I said no, the social definition of disability is that it's a problem of society. So that way, society is responsible, and society has to change. So when I started saying that, there were professionals who said, no, like, you know what, you need a degree in psychology or something. This is just not working. So when challenging those norms is the challenge. And also the bureaucratic process in Bangladesh, I would say, is also a big problem. Like, I'm sure every one of us has gone through registration, and it's still going on. And that's just the #1 problem. You don't get funds unless you're registered. And so, yeah, that is one of our biggest challenges.
So we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to take.
One of the first people I ever listened to while in B school talk about his work and how things really happen. I'll quickly take you through what we do. All right. So what we say is, can you use the development sector to enhance the impact of philanthropy by incorporating a little learning coming down? People are focusing on various sectors that they want to work in. And it's not always that, you know, everyone gets funded, and the number of NGOs, especially in India, is going up like crazy, and not the Human Development Index. So what we say is, can we bring in the social value that philanthropy brings in through non-profits? Keep that social value. Bring in the revenue model from the for-profit sector, and create value and not do charity, not sell products and services, but create value. Can we create that space? And if there is that space, is there somebody to fund that space? I am not talking about impact investors here, just to clear the air for a lot of people who are thinking that in your heads. The question is, you have NGOs and charities, I'm not questioning that at all. There's definitely never going to be a business model for an orphanage or for an old age home, never, ever. There are also good NGOs doing world-class work, like Try selling their cards, creating a slight business model out there. There's also socially responsible businesses like the Tatas. You also have businesses which have a stated social intent, which is definitely funded by the impact investors. But what about those other social businesses which do not want to go ahead and create a business model for shareholders to create value out of their business? What if there is a social enterprise that wants to give back to society but wants to remain and create larger impact? Well, who's going to fund them? So this is a true story with Selco when Mr. Harish Hani decided to register Selco and decided to raise money. He wasn't able to, simply because he wanted to register as a non-profit doing business, and it's not easy to convince government that you're a non-profit wanting to do business. There's Rangde, which is India's first peer-to-peer lending platform, who could not find funders simply because they said that we will not give dividends. We will keep the capital, we'll reinvest in social impact, nobody wanted to fund them. So what's that undeserved space that's still evolving? Is there someone to invest in that space? I will leave this as coming forth from the for-profit sector and we're creating that little middle in between. The only idea here I want to look at to show you the blue spaces where we're saying that in this space, your IRR is positive, most definitely, which means you're definitely breaking even for all of you. But you're not asking for a rate of return that is so high that you are actually having to give up all your social impact for that. The other thing is, for a lot of people in your minds would be thinking,
and of course, what does traction mean? First of all, the problem that you'll learn with investors is that traction means different things to different people. The key to learning about seeking money is that in almost all cases, when you seek money, the people that are giving it to you are not giving you their own money, which means that they have bounds and rules and constructs on how they're allowed to spend the money. So the very first rule is you have to follow their rules. Then the second rule, so knowing what those rules are is probably half the game of fundraising, finding out exactly what their criteria and their selection is. As you go up the chain and try to get money, then you'll hear the invariable traction. So entrepreneurs are in the risk game, investors are in the de-risk game. If there's nothing else I leave you about the fundraising world, it's that. It's probably true in every single way that you ever ask for money. Know that your venture, as passionate as you are, is the riskiest thing you're doing. The investor's job is to specifically not invest in risky things. Now, while that sounds like it's completely contradictory, that is the world of all investing, grants, fundraising, whatever it is. So the hurdle that you always have to cross is to convince the investor that you're actually not that risky of an investment compared to the other things you're looking at. Look at I've de-risked the investment. I've already formed these partnerships. I've sold this revenue. I've created this business model. So if nothing else I leave you from the fundraising conversation, it's that single thing, is that the investors are in the de-risk game. And so knowing who your investors are and knowing what is going to de-risk what's going to be seen as de-risking their business model, that's what's going to get you funding. So the typical, at least young entrepreneur role is, I just built this amazing thing, it's going to totally change the world, isn't it the best thing ever, give me money. That's not how it works. They're going to tell you, that's great, go do it yourself, and then when you make lots of money, come back, I'll happily give you money. And that happens, by the way, all the time. Probably 50% of all companies that get funded actually don't need it. So take into account that for just a moment. 50% of companies that get funded actually don't need it. So what do I mean by that? Doesn't matter. Some restaurants succeeding in Bangladesh, they're great. They got 30 locations. Everything's great. If they did not get investment, they'd be fine. They have 30 restaurants. The only reason they're getting investments is because they want to move to India. Think about this for a second. If they don't get investment, they just don't move to India. They continue their 30 restaurants in Bangladesh. Everything's fine. 50% of companies that get funded fall into that criteria. They're looking for funding for a very specific purpose, and if they don't get funding, they'll be just fine.